Hello there. I would just like to very quickly come on and make this video, something interesting here. So, the recent upload, AI trifurcation, demonic and angelic sci-fi story, someone left a really interesting comment over on my Rumble channel, because I do double upload to Rumble. And the comment was, didn't you say you jumped timelines once and your hair and skin were different? Was that not a timeline? Am I using the wrong word? And yes, I totally misunderstood this as well. So obviously, the nine speaking about timelines, and I was explaining about how I saw that as an entire collective planetary structure, how that would play out as a trifurcation. Obviously, there's some confusion there, and I think that that's because timelines can be used for different meanings from different individuals, different clairvoyants, different people, and there are different meanings with them from the same person. I can use the term timeline and have a different meaning for another time I use the word timeline. So I'm going to try and explain that. It's interesting. This person who left a comment has remembered something. I'm sure I talked about this years ago. In fact, I'd forgotten I even mentioned it. And when I saw the comment, I thought I must have talked about that. Yes, it's absolutely true. In 1993, and it wasn't just me, it was me and it was me and another person that were both going through this spiritual awakening in 1993. I remember waking up and I felt as though everything had changed, that there was this massive timeline shift, and I was in a different reality. Now, we timeline jump all the time. And what that actually means is we've changed the trajectory of our future based on our choices and our actions. And that's what I mean by timeline in that sense. We've changed the trajectory of our future. But because I was a newly awakened, newly spiritually awakened, I did not have the understanding of what that meant. I didn't have the understanding of timelines and how you change your trajectory through choices and through actions and behaviors, words and deeds. I didn't know that you created your reality in that way. So my perception of everything being different, which is a normal presentation for anyone who has shifted their reality into a new trajectory, I didn't understand that. So I became ungrounded in the way I perceived that, if you will, timeline shift or trajectory realignment. I became ungrounded because I remember sitting there looking at my arm and thinking, that's not my arm. And that's not my skin. That's someone. I didn't recognize my skin. I didn't recognize my arm. Now, in a metaphysical sense, that's okay. You can actually have this way of thinking if you can integrate it. But if you stay in that place, that's ungrounded, and that moves into fragmentation of mind, mental illness. It's not grounded. So I wasn't being grounded to look at my arm and think, that's not my skin. That's literally not my arm. That's not my hand. And to actually look in the mirror and that's not my face. This isn't my skin. Look at my hair and think that my hair is different. That's not my hair. And the person that I was with was feeling exactly the same. We were going through these spiritual awakenings at the same time, which happens when you enter a working spiritual partnership with someone. So I remember we went out for a walk to try to ground ourselves, and I remember sitting on a bench and looking out, and I remember looking at the world and looking at cars go by and people walking by, and I remember saying, "Don't you think that this world is so old-fashioned?" And this person that was a spiritual partner to me at the time was saying, "Yes, I feel the same way." And I was saying, well, people are driving along in cars, but really all they need to do is teleport from one place to another. So I was picking up all of this um, memory, I guess, of another reality, a reality way, way in the future from where we were then in 1993. and where we are even now into 2025, although we're much closer to it, but it's still in the future. But I didn't understand any of these things. So, had I changed my timeline? So, there are individual timelines. So, that's your own personal trajectory that you are going through on your own or with someone else, like I was with a spiritual partner. You could call that a timeline. You could refer to that as a timeline. So, using the information that the nine are using, you could actually say that there are three timelines, and all of these three timelines hold a different presentation. One being negative artificial intelligence, one being positive artificial intelligence, and one being no artificial intelligence. And they're all completely separate realities. So the whole of reality has no AI, or the whole of reality has positive AI, or the whole of reality has negative AI. You can interpret it that way, but that would be a metaphor, just like me thinking my skin had changed and my hair had changed because I'm now in a completely new body, because I've just jumped into a totally different timeline and I'm now in an alternate version of myself and not the same version that I was before. That's a metaphor. You can feel and perceive it, but it's a metaphor for you have shifted your trajectory. You've changed the course of your life by thinking differently, by holding a new paradigm, by making different decisions, by making certain choices. So, metaphysically, yes, you've switched timelines, but that isn't necessarily the actual scientific meaning of a timeline. It's a trajectory. So we are talking metaphysically. And when you speak metaphysically, you need to understand the semantics. So what does timeline mean? If you're talking to another person and they use the word timeline, the way forward to have good communication with them would be to say, what do you mean when you say timeline? What do you mean? Because the way you're perceiving timeline might be completely different. And so therefore using that word is going to cause misunderstanding because the semantics hasn't been explained. And in the case of the nine bringing forward a transmission, they're not going to discuss the semantics of every word they use, because I'd be making week-long videos and even longer to actually do that. So I'm going to just explain again. So an individual timeline, if you were to look at that as a reality, not a metaphor, as in one timeline negative, one timeline positive, one timeline no AI. That's metaphor because all of these are in one reality. Let's look at a reality structure, the world, the planet, or a story, a domain. And in that reality is all three. And your choice takes you into the reality that you experience. That is your individual timeline. That's your individual timeline. So that's what the nine are talking about when they present the negative AI, positive AI, no AI. That's your individual timeline. However, there are collective timelines, as in planetary timelines. So, looking from that point of view, that would be the timeline for the planet and Earth and all the people on Earth. Are they all going into the same timeline? They experience different individual timelines, but the same timeline together, but their choices that they make bring about different experience within that structure that's a planet, plane, realm, world, or whatever. So when you're looking at timelines using this model, negative AI, positive AI, or no AI, then looking at that as three separate timelines for the planet, what that would show is a very, very different configuration. What you would see when you look long term at the most probable timeline that sustains, then this Earth, the trajectory we are on right now from this point in 2025, is for AI to be in our reality. Not everyone will utilize it. Not everyone will experience it. It will be through free choice. It will be there when we want it to be there. Therefore, we are on a positive AI timeline long term and all the developments and growth that comes with that. And that may branch off into multiple different varied expressions of reality, but that's the most probable timeline for the planet. But is there a timeline where there's no AI at all as a planetary system? Well, yes, there is, because if you can conceive of something, there'll be a timeline for it. So I'm using the word timeline as a planetary timeline, not an individual one. So this is a choice made by every soul on the planet, and the highest cohesion held within the minds and hearts and the will and the energy system of that group is what steers that planet or that plane or that realm or that world into that trajectory and that probability. So if you want to look at a timeline, a planetary timeline where there's no AI, well, that would be in the past. There's already one. We've been through it because we've lived realities where there was no AI. And then if you want to go through the quantum field, that timeline would be far away from us. All the timelines that are close to us all have AI in them, but there would be some that don't further away. And they're so far away from our quantum field that they kind of dissipate because they aren't coming into fruition. However, the individuals who choose to live a reality without AI, they make a conscious choice, they will draw that timeline into them within the structure of a trifurcation, as in no AI, positive AI or negative AI. They're in that planetary structure that has all three, but they are only creating the one through their choice. Therefore, they will have a higher access to those timelines that don't have AI in. Although they're not living that timeline in a planetary sense, they will be able to draw in frequency and communication from those realities because that's the choice they've made within this structure. I know it's complex but that's multidimensionality and metaphysical thinking and storytelling with layers and layers of stories. So that would be the same with the others. So we've already established that the positive AI timeline is the one for the trajectory long term. The one shorter term is bifurcated between negative and positive, and it's trifurcated because we have the no AI. So where is the negative AI timeline for the entire planet? Well, that is the if you go back to my some of my older videos, if you go to my website and type in magentapixie.com, you'll find the video archive. And if you type in the iron core structure, diamond core, I have a playlist. And I'm talking about this. So the iron core structure is metaphor, but it's also actually literal within the frequencies of space-time. There is a core structure as a main agenda, and that holds a frequency for the reality, the timeline, the trajectory. That would be the iron core structure, which many people would know as the order of the world that is new, the governmental structure of the world that is one. That's the sort of thing. But metaphysically, spiritually, we are looking at a movement into a structure that holds an iron core, iron being the closest element to the frequency it holds, which is a lower frequency. It's a sort of a heavier tone. That stands for that timeline. We bypassed the iron core structure a long time ago. Really, even prior to Stormfire's Top Banana win, it was before that even, but that really sort of sealed it, and more so now. And the diamond core structure, which is a crystalline structure, that's the timeline we are on. So if the core of that trajectory, that structure, that timeline, that's the singularity. You're going towards the core of the timeline. It no longer is a linear line. It's a movement all coming in together in this circular spiral, and the diamond is right at the center. Now, the frequency of the crystalline diamond is the frequency that is permeating out throughout this quantum convergence of timelines, meaning that every single computation within reality will always hold the frequency of the diamond, of the crystalline. And that frequency is bliss charged love, compassion, euphoria, happiness, joy, success, light, creativity. That's the diamond core. And so the AI is just one part of that stream. So, because we're on a trajectory for the diamond core, the AI will eventually align itself with the diamond crystalline structure. So, that's the timeline we are on. So, if you want to look at the negative AI reality, where the whole planetary system is negative AI, that would be an iron core structure where there's no storm, fire, wind. There is a order of the world that is new across the entire village, and there is an enslavement system, a categorization. There is no free will and no freedom. That is also way, way away from us. That they are timelines that exist, but we collectively chose those that hold the highest frequency of broadcast signal from their heart, mind, and their will and their entire energy being. They collectively come together and hold that visual and live that frequency through their choices, through their thoughts, their paradigm, their behavior. There's so many of those individuals at critical mass that you have to, reality has to align with that. So when you look through the quantum field, yes, there's these negative realities, but they are further away. But there are those within the overlord structure, the state that is deep, that choose that. And so they are still trying to find that. Now, that will dissipate because it doesn't hold longevity, it cannot sustain. But they will still be able to draw some substance, some communication from those realities that we are no longer on a trajectory for. And they've been trying so hard to get us back onto that timeline. That's why Stormfire stepping up, and then Gabriella Tulsini coming into play, and then the whole library with all of the elders. That in itself is just aligning more and more and more with the diamond core. This is why they are showing such frustration, and why there is a decay within their frequency and within their energy, because they need the iron core to sustain them. So they're trying so hard to key into these other timelines that are long gone and out of our reality. The only way they can get there would be to reincarnate again, but they would go through a regenesis and draw that into a reality through another means. And that's also another way of saying they create a negative dimension. And that is nothing to do with the dimension where we are. And that brings me to another topic. There are spiritual teachers that will say that the negative can access 5D, the fifth dimension, and the nine are always saying they cannot. They can get to the fourth dimension, and then once you get to the fifth dimension, they cannot access that. Well, that's absolutely true. But another way of looking at this, another model to present this, would be to say that the third dimension is, say, here, let's say, and this is just one model, and then the fourth dimension is, say, there, and that's positive and negative, and the negative can access that. So you've got this three and four intertwined. And then the fifth, when the fifth dimension is accessed by those within the light, the diamond core structure, those individuals, for them, the negative dissipates, decays, is recycled, goes through regenesis, and doesn't exist for them anymore. It's gone from their reality, it's gone from their timeline field. So negative structure can't access that fifth dimension. But what they can access or create is a negative fifth dimension. And all that is them accessing these timelines that are long gone, hooking into iron core structures and trying to redo that all again, either getting that here, and that isn't possible anymore. It's not possible anymore. That has gone. There is no chance, and they're still trying. They're still trying to get back onto that. And what they would need to do is generate a critical mass of fear. And it's too late because the critical mass of hope, sovereignty, strength, joy. Okay, so we have a real mix of energies at the moment, but that's the overriding factor. So it isn't possible for them to get that. So for them to key into these other iron core structures and go through regenesis and recreate a reality where they can experience that, that would be called, if you will, negative 5D, negative fifth dimension. But it's simply the reason why it's a fifth dimension is because it's a higher step up from the fourth dimension, but it doesn't exist from the perspective of those within the light fifth dimension. It simply doesn't exist. It's only when you step out of the construct entirely of all these dimensions can you actually see all of them. And even there, it is simply a metaphysical idea, a concept, um, a um, a philosophy, a discussion point. But energetically, it's there because if there's one person within a planetary structure adding to the consciousness, then their thoughts will create a field of some kind. And that field is then given substance, so it manifests or it dissipates. So for those within the positive fifth dimension, the diamond core structure, which is where the planet is right now, or rather the planet is moving through the higher echelons of the fourth dimension, but there are many in the fifth dimension right now. For those individuals, that other reality, that negative, that iron core structure has dissipated. It doesn't exist. It is not in the trajectory. And that's planetary wide. So that's the whole collective. There are still individual timelines where individuals can draw those realities to them, but the planetary timeline only has one timeline. It's a convergence of all timelines coming into the center, and the center of the convergence is crystalline. It is a diamond core structure. It's crystalline, and everything that is in alignment with the crystal and the diamond, which is the highest vibration of bliss, and it is an electrical charge of bliss. That is where we are going. So I know that that is deep and metaphysical, but this comment made me realize that whilst I had explained individual presentations of timelines in the last upload, I hadn't really touched on collective timelines. So there are different meanings for the word timeline. So when somebody does use the term timeline, ask them, do you mean collective timelines or do you mean individual timelines? And it will depend on the individual. Some clairvoyant readers may only know of individual timelines. Others may only see planetary timelines. And then there will be those that see both of those. And then, of course, there are galactic timelines, and that's a whole other story that I do not have access to at this point. I'm aware of what a galactic timeline is, but it's far, far bigger in our comprehension, because what you are looking at when you look at galactic timelines are multiple spirals merging together, and that's where you get all of the sacred geometry. That's when you move into the flower of life, let's say, and other sacred geometry fields that mirror unification. So that's where you would get the fifth dimensional Merkaba. The galactic timelines are the let's say the dwelling place, if you will, for the nine. That's where they would be. So if I needed to speak about galactic timelines, I would ask the nine to talk, because the focus for the understanding and the process of processing of that comes from the galactic aspect, not the human aspect, not the third, fourth, and fifth dimensional aspect, even. It's beyond that. So I thought that was a very interesting comment, and I thought I would just pop on here and have a little have a little chat about it and explain it a little bit more. So I hope that's helped a bit further because the most difficult thing to wrap your head around is the fact that there are no timelines, that there is just one moment. There is only the source point, which would be a crystalline diamond core. That's all there is. Timelines are metaphors or they are measurements, actually. They are measurements for us to decode reality through our brain. It's very difficult for us to decode reality when all you see is a diamond, a unified structure, a source point, a 0 point. All is one. There isn't even any language there. So you wouldn't make a video and talk to people in the frequency of the absolute diamond core where there's only one timeline because there's no speech there. Speech There is no speech in that level. It's frequency only. So when you are incarnated in 3D, you find the best way you can to explain all of these different levels. So the best way to look at this is individual timelines, collective timelines. So a planetary timeline regarding AI. Yes, we are on the trajectory for positive AI long term. There will be a negative AI presentation short term, and that iron core structure will sustain for a while, but it's already begun its decay. So it's going to start to fall away. And eventually, that is gone from one's reality, and all that remains is the focus to the diamond core. That is the trajectory we are on, and that cannot be changed now. We're too close to the core singularity point for that to change. So I hope that's explained what is meant. So it's correct to say we're in a bifurcated reality. There are three timelines, and when it comes to artificial intelligence, there's negative artificial intelligence, positive artificial intelligence, and no artificial intelligence. And this is your choice point. You get to choose this. Well, you do because you are choosing. Your choice is creating your individualized timeline within a structure. But when it comes to the planet, there's no there is no choice point because you're already focused upon that diamond core structure, which is the singularity, and that isn't even a timeline. It's an all-encompassing frequency. You're already there from that point of view. So it's a different way of looking at things. So there are multiple timelines, there are infinite timelines, and the other end of the spectrum, there are no timelines. They're both true. There are three timelines for this structure of artificial intelligence. We are on a trifurcation. We will have a three-way choice point, and one can also say there are not three timelines, there's only one, and it's the positive. All of this is true. All of this is true, depending on where you place your perspective, what reality model you're looking at, and what you mean by the terms that you are using. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Lots of love. Bye.